There are stretches of road in southern Afghanistan that some consider the most dangerous in the world. Highway 1 linking Kabul and Kandahar, and Highway 4 which stretches to the border of Pakistan, home to Canadian troops with NATO doing battle against the Taliban. Those troops are sustained by truckloads of supplies. They travel in convoys down these dusty, dangerous highways, and the armies here pay for security. Private firms who put their own, usually Afghan employees, at risk of attacks by insurgents. Safe passage for supplies, often paid in blood. But there are recent reports that some security firms may be bribing Taliban and other insurgents not to attack. It's a chilling notion. NATO money being used to fund the enemy. It's a story that brings us to Dubai. Some of those allegations center on Rateb Popal. His company has some of those lucrative security contracts and has been linked to stories of bribery. For the first time, he is going on the record about the claims being made against him.
Why are you talking to us? Why did you agree to this interview?
Because we want to clear our position. You know, for me and for my companies, they can come in and they can take as long as they want to. They can check all our records and find out whether we're telling the truth or not. And I know that we're telling the truth because I know every penny where we're spending it, where it's coming from and where it's going. And none of it is going to Taliban.
But the truth seems elusive. As Popal makes his defense to us, it's clear that his own story, like that of the murky world of private security contractors, is far from straightforward. The Afghanistan of Popal's childhood was prosperous, even luxurious. His father was a landowner, a government official, and educated. The family is big and influential. A close cousin, Afghanistan President Hamid Karzai.
You had a car?
That's my father's.
Was that at that time in Canada? That was a symbol of great wealth.
It was, yeah, of course, yeah. Not many people.
Its peace was shattered in the communist coup of 1978. Popal's father violently arrested.
Were you there when your father was taken?
Yeah, I was there. I was at home, and they took my father, and my mother protested, and the officer who took him said, "Don't worry, we'll just bring him back tomorrow. We're taking him for some questions." And that was it. We never heard from him. We never saw him again.
A teenage Popal, angry and vowing revenge for his father's death, was radically transformed from well-heeled schoolboy to anti-communist resistor. He became a freedom fighter, or mujahideen. But in an early effort at insurgency, planting 2 bombs near the Russian embassy in Kabul, Popal was injured badly.
I felt it. I moved up and hit back on the ground, and then I wanted to get up and I couldn't reach because I didn't have my arm, my hands were not there. And at the time I just laid down. I thought I was going to die at the time.
He lost an eye and his left hand, as well as 3 fingers on his right hand. Money and connections saved Popal. He was sent to Germany for surgery, to be fitted with a prosthetic hand and glass eye, and for physiotherapy. Popal's family had fled Afghanistan for Pakistan. He joined them there and turned to drug running, a decision that would end badly and would one day add to the controversy around his name. Popal was nabbed in New York in 1988, convicted of heroin trafficking and sentenced to 9 years in prison. Not long after, younger brother Rashid was also convicted.
Today, you will have seen newspaper articles that'll say, the Popal brothers, convicted drug traffickers.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I feel very, very bad about it. And, for me, yes, I did what I did. I'm not going to say I didn't do it, or I apologize to the people all the time. I did my time for whatever happened. Ever since then, I've never even thought about going back to the drug business or have anything to do in Afghanistan with drugs or the United States or anywhere else.
Fresh from jail, Popal made his way back to Afghanistan. Times had changed, and so Popal also changed again. Gone were the communists and mujahideen of his teens. The Taliban were in power, and while he says he never joined them, Popal adopted the mandatory dress and beard of the Taliban. Once again, using his ability to make strong connections, he begins building a business. In 2001, Popal is back in Pakistan, and in the days after 9/11, takes part in a series of pivotal press conferences led by Taliban ambassador Abdul Salam Zarif. At his side, as unofficial translator, none other than Rateb Popal.
Being his friend doesn't make you a Taliban supporter.
No, even when I was at that time, I was his friend and I was not a Taliban supporter. As I said, I'm a businessman. At that time, that's why I went to business, because business is neutral. I came back to do something positive for my country and for my people.
From upper-class childhood to rebel warrior to towing the line of a repressive Taliban government, Rateb Popal has developed an ability to be whatever the situation requires him to be.
Following his career, he comes across to me as an operator. Somebody who is prepared to cultivate a personal relationship with anybody who can create a business opportunity for him.
Michael Semple spent more than 16 years working in Afghanistan and Pakistan. He's considered an expert on the region and on the Taliban. He knows Popal by reputation.
His comparative advantage is that to the Talibs he can be a friend of the Talibs, and to the Americans he can be a friend of America. He's made a spectacularly successful career of trading upon that ability to smile to both sides.
But the opposition forces were defeated, about 11 dead and 20 prisoners were taken.
However close he was to the Taliban, today there's a new version of Rateb Popal. Cosmopolitan dress and a thriving business, and there is no question the war in Afghanistan has made him richer.
Are you more well off now?
Of course, yes. A lot of money came to Afghanistan, and I'm an acute businessman, and I saw opportunities, and I took them.
Highway 1 is Watan Risk's main contract. This video was shot by an employee on a security detail. It's a dirty business, but protecting a truck down this dangerous road is also clearly a lucrative one.
This year, total, not only on the convoys, the total turnover of Watan Risk Management was probably between $45 to $50 million.
If you lost the security business for the convoys, do you know what hunk that would be if the U.S. government took it over or somebody else took it over?
If we lose that portion, probably 30 to 40%.
Now the controversy. The security firms are dogged by persistent claims from military personnel and others that bribes are being paid to local warlords and insurgents along Highway 1. Reports so rampant, some simply don't find denials credible.
Nobody believes that, because they are taking money in pain also.
Nurullah Olami is an Afghan member of parliament, former chair of its Defense Affairs Committee. He's from the south of Afghanistan and knows the territory the convoys travel well. He seems to think bribery is a fact of life on these roads.
Security company without paying that money cannot keep safe or this kind of convoy. We know many example around Afghanistan which one is if sometimes that that things is happened when they didn't pay the money. The convoy were burned, and that's it.
You don't believe it's possible to pay off everybody on the road?
It's impossible to pay off because there's so many different groups on Highway 1. There's groups and Taliban groups. That there's not one single commander that you pay off that will give you safe passage from one end to another.
Your men died in this.
Of course. We have the highest casualty amongst all the companies. During the summer, only in July we lost 140 men. On average, from May of last year till October of this year, we averaged about 50 losses per month.
Why are your losses worse than others?
Because we basically force our convoys. We don't pay anybody.
Does that tell us they're not paying people off if they're losing that many men?
It tells you that they're certainly using one of the two strategies. They're using the strategy of trying to shoot their way through. It doesn't tell you that they are not supplementing it by paying their way through, because I think that they are right if they tell you that it's difficult to pay our way through everywhere. It may well be that they've got some stretches of the road covered with agreements with enforcers and other stretches of the road where they haven't got a functioning agreement. The people on the other side are holding out for too much money. So almost as a commercial decision, they say, okay, this month we're going to run through this.
In Washington, the idea that NATO dollars might be winding up in Taliban hands in the form of bribes, then used to fund the very bombs killing young Americans, is met by outrage. U.S. Congressman John Tierney has begun an investigation. Tierney is chair of the National Security Subcommittee, now reviewing the allegations.
I mean, we have evidence and a number of emails that we've talked to, and witnesses that we've spoken to, is that people have been informed that this is going on, and there's been some acknowledgement of it amongst people in some pretty high levels, but there's also been a feeling amongst those whom we interviewed that they just don't quite know what to do about it.
On the ground in Afghanistan, getting those trucks down the road is a priority. Does that mean NATO's International Security Assistance Force, or ISAF, turns a blind eye? In the complexities of a war zone, do the ends sometimes justify the means? That idea doesn't sit well with Tierney.
I'm outraged by it. I think the American public is going to be outraged by it. There's going to have to be balance. If this is the policy that ISAF, the international forces, and the United States have decided to follow, then we'll want to explore with them why this is a good policy.
ISAF says it does not condone the bribing of insurgents. And with growing reports of the practice, it established a new Armed Contractor Oversight Directorate to review all contracts. We asked ISAF to respond to allegations bribes are still being paid. Directorate Head Colonel Sean Lee agreed to speak with us from Kabul.
We have on the record all of these military personnel saying that they've seen these payments being made by the contractors to the Taliban.
I have seen television interviews, I have seen newspaper articles that suggest these payments. I have not seen any of these activities, and I believe that there are enough measures in place at this point in time to detect those activities.
There is a fear that NATO is turning a blind eye.
I don't believe that we are turning a blind eye. I think we recognize the complexity of this environment, and we are working very, very diligently, prudently, to have better visibility, better cooperation among all the partnership that we have created now.
Afghan President Hamid Karzai cuts the ribbon on a newly paved Highway 1, home to Bhopal's lucrative security business. Karzai's government is accused of corruption, of favoring insiders with contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars doled out to relatives. Karzai cousins Rateb and Rashid Popal claim no special treatment. The concern, though, is that the way the security contracts are being awarded may be helping fuel cronyism and corruption. That has serious consequences if it weakens the Afghan population's trust in its government.
I get worked up at this notion that a small number of people who are well connected to the regime can benefit to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. I think that we should get angry about this because this undermines the fundamental mission that we are dedicated to in Afghanistan. It undermines the cause of stability in the country.
ISAF says it won't accept corruption by contracted security firms, but admits this is a mission that cannot be done without them. These firms and the locals they employ account for a sizable proportion of firepower on the ground for NATO.
Amanda, private security companies represent, if you will, close to 1/5 of the total armed forces in this particular conflict. We rely on these companies a great deal.
We should be honest in understanding that it's a very difficult job to get supplies delivered through this territory. To turn a blind eye to that would be a grievous mistake, but the solutions are not easy. It's not a question of just issuing a rule that from now on nobody will pay off the Taliban, because of course everybody will claim to be adhering to that, and people will find loopholes to carry on with the same practice.
The war in Afghanistan grinds on, and with summer ahead, roadside attacks will worsen. Far from those dangerous, lucrative roads, Popal worries about his business and his reputation. For now, all we have is his word that he is not paying off the Taliban. As Popal contemplates the future, he seems confident he can adapt. Adapting is what he does best.
So answer this question for me if you can. Who is Rateb Popal?
An Afghan who went through a lot in his life, like the country did. We are a very complicated country, and of course, every one of us gets affected by our environment, and has affected me in my